I am speaking as I do every week with State Senator Bruce Tarr. Hi, Senator. How are you today?
Hi, good afternoon, Heather. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I know you are neck high in budget, in fiscal year 2022 budget. So tell us what's going on.
So it really is probably the most intense time of the year in the Senate, and that's because we're dealing with the budget. And so what's happened so far is the Senate Ways and Means Committee released its budget proposal for fiscal year 2022 last week, and members had by Friday at 2 p.m. to be able to file budget amendments last Friday. 923 of them were filed, which is not the highest number we've ever seen. It's a large number, but it reflects sort of a return to normal in terms of having the ability perhaps to fund some more things than we were able to in the current fiscal year. And 109 of those amendments were mine. Now that's a large number, but I also play two roles in terms of trying to set the agenda for the minority party in the debate, as well as being able to represent the interests of our Senate district. So historically, the minority leader has a lot of amendments. That is no different this year. And those amendments range all over the board, Heather. And in fact, people can read them by going to our website at malegislature.gov. And on that page, there's a tab that says budget. And if you click on that, and then you click on Senate debate, you can read all of the 923 amendments.
What I'm going to do this weekend. I'm going to jump to that.
Well, that's what I'll be doing, is going through them all. But I thought I might mention just a few that we filed out of the 109 that might be of local interest. And perhaps the most significant issue that is probably going to be controversial in this budget debate is what we do with the Massachusetts film tax credit, which has brought so much business to Cape Ann as a result of providing an incentive that entices people to produce all kinds of content here, not only film content, but also video content and all kinds of other things. The film tax credit, like almost every tax credit in Massachusetts, has a sunset date associated with it, and that's rapidly approaching. And so the House extended the sunset date. The Senate proposal out of the Committee on Ways and Means extends the credit for a little bit longer, but also restricts it in some very significant and counterproductive ways. And so we're going to be talking in our Senate budget debate about not doing those negative things to the film tax credit and keeping it viable so that we're competitive among our competitor states to be able to make film productions. So that's probably going to be something you'll see a fair amount of debate about next week. And we have a fair amount of support for keeping the credit as it is and just extending the deadline, but it's not a given that that's what will happen. So that's a very significant issue. Something else that you and I have talked about in the past relative to the right whale. I filed a number of amendments, not only to protect the right whale, but also to try to protect our lobster industry as we try to protect the right whale. And so one of the interesting things that the industry has asked for are more environmental police patrols to protect the right whales. And so I filed an amendment to fund additional patrols directed for that express purpose so that we can prevent harm from coming to the whales, but also make sure that lobstermen can continue to fish. So that's very significant. And along the same lines, I've got an amendment that would cause us to look at how we might modify our system of unemployment insurance so that lobstermen who are now effectively prevented from fishing for several months out of the year might be eligible for unemployment insurance in a different way than they are now, so we can try to mitigate the economic harm that they've been facing.
That is really important. Can I just understand this correctly? Was it the lobster industry that asked for the additional patrol?
Yes, they
That's
did.
Interesting.
So we, in a meeting with the Mass Lobstermen's Association, they suggested that it really is in everyone's best interest to prevent the whales from being harmed so that there'll be less need for even more dramatic restrictions than we have now. And so it's a really good touch point for how both sides can work together, because it's a win-win if we can get something accomplished along those lines.
Absolutely. I mean, it almost seems absurd to shut down an entire industry to allow this species, which is very important, to pass by when we could simply have, safety guards for them, crossing guards for them.
Well, and that's one of the things that I'm trying to do. And unfortunately, a lot of what's happening is being driven by judicial decisions and court cases that are still pending. And so what the Division of Marine Fisheries is trying to do is find a balance that will allow the fishery to continue while still meeting the requirements that the courts are going to insist upon and that federal laws insist upon in terms of protecting right whales as a species. So it really is a challenging situation. I'm trying to do some things in the state budget that will make it better.
Great. Well, anything else that we can discuss that would more directly impact this area?
Well, we could go on forever, but there are just a whole host of things. And again, they can all be seen at our Mass Legislative website. And I'm just trying to think as we speak of other things. One additional thing, we've talked from time to time about drought issues and drought management. I also have an amendment that would provide funding for regional drought management plans, which are something that are very important to have and that we have too few of, if any. And so we're trying to work on that. We also trying to provide some funding to regional vaccination clinics. There is one developing in our region. There's also one in the Upper Merrimack Valley. They deserve state support, so we're trying to provide them with some support as well. And so again, there are a whole host of things, and I'll just end with one that's important to everybody across the state, and that is trying to help folks who are seniors be able to have more access to Medicare healthcare benefits by expanding eligibility for our Medicare savings program, which takes advantage of the fact that if a senior is able to get a Medicare buy-in program, it saves the Commonwealth of Massachusetts money and it saves the senior money. So we're working on that as well. And that's the interesting thing about the budget, Heather, is that it's the one document where you can see practically any subject in the world being considered. And that's why you have 923 amendments.
Okay, I have one last question for you. Do you love this process? Do you love this time of year when you're building the budget, or do you dread it? Or what is your favorite time of year?
It's a combination of emotions. And so I love it because of the ability to try to address so many different subjects, but it also involves a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous amount of attention to details that are voluminous. And so it's one of those things where it's coming every year. You get ready for it psychologically. You have the chance to be able to do some tremendous positive things. And you also know that you have to be looking to make sure there aren't any unintended negative consequences of amendments. So it really makes you feel alive as a legislator, let me put it that way, to be in these 3 weeks that we're in right now for the Senate and that the House went through back in April.
So you're in debate right now.
We will be in debate starting next week on Tuesday at 10 a.m. Generally, we debate from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And the budget is the only thing that's on the agenda during the days that we're considering it. Now, the last day of debate, we don't know if it will be Thursday or if we'll go into Friday. It's not unusual on the last day of budget debate to go a little later than 10 p.m. if we're close to reaching conclusion, rather than start a whole additional legislative day. But definitely next week, Tuesday and Wednesday, most likely Thursday and maybe even Friday will be the days we'll be debating.
And what is the process after that? I know we're close to the end, right?
We're in the middle because okay. We have, you have now the House has passed its version of the budget. We will pass our version. Then those two things go into conference committee. And that's when 3 members of the House and 3 members of the Senate will reconcile the differences in the 2 proposals. And then what's called a conference committee report comes back from that conference committee. And legislators only have one decision that they can make on that conference committee report. Either they accept it or they reject it. And if they reject it, then the process goes back to conference. But usually what happens is it gets accepted. When that happens, then it goes to the governor, and the governor has 10 days to look at everything and either send back approvals or send back amendments or outright veto things because he has a line item veto in Massachusetts. And then those come back to be considered by the House and the Senate. So we're a good deal along in the process, but we're not in the final stages yet.
Well, on that note, I'll just comment how hard you work, and thank you very much.
Thank you. It's an honor to be able to do it. And it's an honor that I think about every day, of how fortunate I am to be able to fulfill this role and represent the people in our region.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I know you need to get back to work right now. So
I
bye.
Well, thank you very much. And we look forward to talking again soon.